So you want 5 grand to keep that dump full of your broken-down veterans running? My brother spat, flinging the check onto the lawn. Get in the ring with me for 3 minutes. Stay on your feet till morning and I'll personally drive the bulldozer through that camp myself. That was the gift my family handed me in front of a crowd of their most important guests. All around us, the wealthy partygoers, including my own mother and father, cheered and clapped. They couldn't wait to watch my 6'3", black belt MMA champion of a brother humiliate his dirt-poor little sister. Not one of them cared that, back at my camp, a wounded brother-in-arms was sitting in despair because he was about to lose the only roof over his head. My brother rolled his shoulders and smirked down at me, certain he was about to spend 3 easy minutes crushing something fragile. He had no idea what was coming. I bent down, unlaced my boots, straightened up, and looked him dead in the eye. You sure you can survive 3 minutes? Before I go further, if this story is hitting home, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Standing on that perfectly trimmed lawn, the cologne drifting off him hit me like a physical shove backward through time. That same sneer, arrogant, cold, had haunted me for 20 years. It was the look of a boy raised to believe he owned the world, and that I was something scraped off the bottom of his shoe. With my bare, calloused feet sinking into imported grass, I felt the old weight of that estate crash down on me again, the heavy doors, the suffocating quiet of those hallways, the sense of being a guest in my own house. He was staring at me exactly like he used to, like a broken toy waiting to be finished off. The frightened kid I once was had been buried under years of discipline and survival instinct. Still, for one heartbeat, the cruelty in his eyes almost dragged me back into that old submission. When I was 15, the pecking order in that house was already set in stone by my parents. Daniel was the golden child who could do no wrong. Every trophy, every hard hit on the football field, got him a party full of admirers. My quiet report cards went straight into a drawer, unread. I learned to move through those halls without making a sound, a ghost in my own home. Speak up, and I was too loud. Stay silent, and I didn't exist. I buried myself in the library instead, reading about war to escape the fact that nobody wanted me there. I watched my parents nurture my brother's cruelty at school like it was leadership. They were raising a shark, and I was just the leftover. At 17, I lost the last of my illusions. I'd spent months building a mechanical engineering project for a state competition, pouring every ounce of my need to be seen into it. My brother walked in, saw it sitting on the table, and smashed it with a golf club. Not out of anger, just because he felt like it. When I broke down crying, my father just sighed over his scotch. Don't be so sensitive, Sarah. He's just being himself. Clean it up. That was the moment I understood, in that house, feeling anything was a weakness, and cruelty was strength. I never cried in front of them again. I swept up the wreckage of my project, and with it, any hope that I'd ever be loved there. 3 days after I turned 18, I made the decision that changed everything. I finally accepted I'd never earn their love no matter how hard I tried, so I stopped trying. In the middle of the night, I packed one duffel bag, no jewelry, no dresses, just the basics, and walked down that long driveway without looking back. No note. Nobody noticed until the housekeeper checked my room the next day. A week later I walked into a Marine recruiting office. The smell of coffee and floor polish couldn't have been further from crystal chandeliers and perfume. The recruiter eyed my soft hands skeptically, but my voice didn't waver when I signed. For the first time, I felt like my life belonged to me. Boot camp tore me apart and rebuilt me. Nobody there cared about my last name or my family's money, only whether I quit or didn't. Dragging another recruit through the mud while live rounds cracked overhead, I realized my empathy wasn't a flaw, it was useful. I turned years of buried anger into stamina, mile by mile, until the invisible girl I used to be was gone, replaced by someone who'd earned her place. When they pinned that emblem on me, I wasn't a Reed anymore. I was a Marine. During my first deployment, sitting in a tent in Afghanistan listening to artillery in the distance, I cracked, just a little. Watching other Marines read letters from home, I wrote to my parents, short, flat, just letting them know I was alive. I checked mail call every week for months. Nothing ever came. Other people got cookies and photos. I got silence, the loudest kind of rejection there is. That silence told me everything. I'd been erased. From then on, I stopped looking back. The military was my family now. Over the next 10 years I earned my captain's bars through pure grit. I learned to bury the pain and turn it into steady leadership that kept my people alive under fire. I became someone strangers respected and my own blood despised, a hero on one side of the world, a disappointment on the other. It was in combat, sharing water and fear in the dirt itself with people who didn't care about my bank account, that I found what my parents never gave me, real loyalty. That's where I met Mac, a sergeant who lost a leg shielding his squad from a blast and still only worried about his men's minds, not his own body. He became the father figure I never had, the one who talked me down through nightmares and taught me that real strength means absorbing pain for others, not inflicting it. Coming home for good, I watched men I'd fought beside end up homeless while people just like my family stepped over them without a second glance. That injustice lit something in me. I couldn't fix my own family, but I could refuse to let my brothers in arms be thrown away too. 2 years ago, I cashed out everything I had, savings, combat pay, my pension, and bought a rundown old farm. Mac and I rebuilt it with our own hands, cabins, plumbing, fields. We called it Camp Freedom, no luxury, just safety, for veterans fighting homelessness, addiction, and PTSD. 3 weeks ago, we'd finally found our rhythm, group therapy, a garden coming in, quiet nights without anyone screaming through a nightmare. Then the certified letter arrived. A shell company had bought our loan and demanded $5,000 immediately to stop foreclosure. I dug through corporate filings for 2 days until I found the name behind the shell company, signed in ink I recognized instantly. Daniel Reed. He didn't need this land. He owned high-rises. This wasn't business, it was revenge, plain and simple, because I'd built something without asking his permission. Yesterday morning, a sheriff's deputy zip-tied an eviction notice to our gate. Bulldozers were coming the next day at 8 a.m. I found Mac alone by the flagpole, sobbing over a photo of his fallen squad. Something in me snapped. I tore the notice down, got in my truck, and drove straight for my parents' 40th anniversary party, where I knew my brother would be. I pulled up in my beat-up truck next to a row of luxury cars, in muddy boots and a work jacket, and walked straight through a crowd in tuxedos and gowns who looked at me like I was something that had wandered in off the street. My father blocked my path, furious, hissing that I was there to embarrass him. My mother told me, loudly, in front of everyone, to go back to my garbage dump with my crippled soldiers. I swallowed it and walked straight to my brother. Daniel. Write the check. I'll pay you back with interest. Just call off the foreclosure. His wife made a show of covering her nose in disgust. My brother laughed, signed the check, and threw it in the dirt at my feet. You want $5 grand? Step in the ring with me. Last 3 minutes. Drop before morning and I flatten that camp myself. My father actually raised his glass to that. I looked at the check in the grass, thought about Mac's tears, and nodded. If you've ever had to swallow your pride to protect people you love, hit like, and tell me in the comments, how did you survive when your own family turned on you? The guests formed a circle like they were at a coliseum. My parents took front row seats. I took off my boots, stood barefoot on that manicured lawn, and let my shoulders slump like I was already beaten. My brother stripped off his jacket, cracked his knuckles, sure this would take seconds. I looked up and let the mask drop for just a second. You sure you can last 3 minutes? The butler, visibly shaking, called the start. My brother came in like a freight train, no testing, no patience, a single overhand right meant to end it instantly. I didn't dodge. I tucked my chin and took it square on the crown of my skull. The crack echoed across the yard. He staggered back, shaking his hand, my mouth filled with blood, and something in me clicked into place. Fear turned into absolute clarity. I wasn't asking for a loan anymore. I was a trained operator, and he'd just made his first mistake. Furious that I was still standing, he threw a roundhouse aimed at my head. I stepped into it before it built speed, killed its momentum, and shoved him hard. He went down in front of the whole stunned crowd. I wiped blood off my lip and dropped into a proper stance. The real fight had only just started. He charged to grapple me. I shifted my weight, let him overextend, grabbed his collar, and threw him over my hip. He crashed down hard enough to send a waiter and a tray of champagne flying. I stood over him, breathing steady. 2 minutes 15 left. He got up shaking, driven by pure humiliation now, and forced a clinch, then drove a knee into my side. Something cracked. Pain tore through my ribs, white hot. But pain, to me, is just information. I stayed upright, refused to make a sound, and struck back, a hard jab to his throat that made him gag and loosen his grip, then a crossface that scrambled his balance completely. I swept his leg and put him down again. The lawn that had always symbolized my family's untouchable status was now mud, blood, and spilled champagne. I mounted him, controlled his arms, and locked in a choke, counting down under my breath so only he could hear it. His struggling weakened. His face went purple. And then, he tapped. I held it 1 second longer than I needed to, just so he'd understand exactly whose mercy he was surviving on, then let go and stood up. He lay there coughing in the grass, utterly wrecked, not just physically, but every illusion he'd ever had about himself. I didn't offer him a hand. I just stepped back and let him have it. The music had died. The crowd stood frozen, horrified by the violence they'd been begging for minutes earlier. My parents stared at me like I was a stranger, because I was. There'd be no reconciliation, no apology. I was an outcast to them, and completely fine with that. The old butler was the only one brave enough to move. He picked the mud-stained check off the grass and handed it to me without a word, his eyes full of something like respect after decades of watching this family operate. I took it, folded it, and tucked it against my chest. The debt was paid, not through begging, but through force. I didn't owe any of them anything, ever again. I laced my boots back up, straightened my spine, and looked at each of them one last time, my brother still gasping on the ground, his wife cowering behind a chair, my parents frozen in shock, letting them see there was nothing left in me that wanted their love. Then I turned and walked out. The gates shut behind me with a heavy metal clang, and for the first time in 36 years, I walked away whole. Driving back, the adrenaline faded and the pain came roaring in, every pothole jolting my cracked rib. But my hand stayed locked around that check like a lifeline. It was the cheapest price I'd ever pay for our freedom. Dawn broke as I pulled up to Camp Freedom. No bulldozer. Just quiet mist over the cabins. Mac was still parked by the gate in his wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket, having kept watch all night, certain we'd lost everything. When he saw my truck, his face went from dread to open relief. I got out, moving stiff and sore, bruised and bloodied, and walked over to him. He didn't ask what happened. I put the check in his hands. "We're safe, Mac. Nobody's taking this place." He looked down at it, tears falling, and gripped my shoulder with more warmth than my own father ever managed in my whole life. Standing under the flagpole, watching the flag snap in the wind, I understood. I hadn't just won a fight on that lawn. I'd finally broken the hold my past had on me for good. every scar, every bruise, every cracked rib was proof of what I'd bought back, my own life. Behind me, cabin doors started opening as the others came out and saw the flag still flying, saw Mac's tears, and understood without being told that home was safe. Some saluted the flag. Some saluted me. I didn't need the Reed name, a mansion, or a trust fund. I had something money can't buy, people who'd bleed for me, because I bled for them first. Sometimes the family you build out of shared scars is stronger than the one you were born into. If that's true for you too, like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, how did you walk away from what hurt you and find your own peace?